Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of the Rectified Podcast. Today's episode is special because we're going to talk about a subject that's a little sensitive, but it's something that many Canadian businesses are going through and are suffering from. Today, my guest is Kristi Soomer, the founder of Encircled. Welcome, Kristi.
Thank you, Sandy, for having me. I appreciate it.
Kristi, before going into the issue of today, just tell me a little bit more about your brand, what it's all about, what it stands for, etc.
Sure. So I run a brand called Encircled. We are a line of women's wander leisure, is what we call it. It's an intersection between, athleisure. It's very comfortable.
Yeah.
It's travel clothing inspired, so very functional. So think lots of pockets and versatility. And then it's dressy. So the fabrics we use are very easy to dress up or dress down. So we think of us somewhere in between like a Lululemon and like Banana Republic, except we're all made in Canada. And we're also a certified B Corp. So sustainability is really important to us, as is quality and longevity of our products. So we're not your typical brand that launches like thousands of styles a year. Typically, we're launching, somewhere between 5 to 7 products a year. So we really focus on keeping stuff in our collection and designing pieces that will last in a woman's wardrobe.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about the name also. How did you come up with it?
Yeah, so actually my first piece is this 8-in-1 garment. So I originally started the line because I was a management consultant and I was traveling all the time and I was living out of a suitcase. And I designed this scarf that turns into like a tunic, a dress, a one-shoulder gown, a cardigan, a top, and it's called the Chrysalis cardigan. And essentially when you like undo all the snaps, it's a big circle.
Okay.
So when I had invented that product, I wasn't
Yes.
really sophisticated as people are now with brand. This is like 2012. I was like, what names go with circles and scarves? And I literally sat there all night just like brainstorming. This is pre-AI. So like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
writing on like a wall, okay, like circle, blah, blah, blah. And I really wanted to create a brand that had, really created quality products for our customers, but did so without harming people and the planet in the process. So I felt like it kind of had to be this like full circle kind of brand. So that's kind of how I got to Encircled.
Yeah.
It seems like I was probably more intentional at the time, but it was
Yeah.
actually just like kind of a name that popped into my head. We were lucky enough to secure it
Mm-hmm.
and get the trademark.
Mm-hmm. You're not the first management consultant who turned into a business founder. The last a couple of episodes ago, I was talking to someone. She used to do risk consulting in one of the big fours,
Mhm.
and now you're the second person. Tell me a little bit about life post management consulting, and being in that crazy world.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting. Management consulting was actually my dream career. So, I didn't start a business out of school. I actually,
Yeah.
came out of school and I worked for a bit and then I went back to get my MBA with the goal of primarily just getting into consulting. So,
Mm-hmm.
once I got there, I was like, this is amazing. And then quickly I realized like you have no life, you're never home. Like at that time, consultants were on the road 5 days a week
Yes.
flying. So you're racking up all these miles. It seems very exotic, but you're actually like never here. And you have no life consequently, because you're always jumping on a plane. So I think the novelty of it wore off pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Running your own business is like consulting on crack, because it's like yes, you are your own boss, but I think it's really hard for people who are, come from consulting probably too, because we're all very type A and very
Yeah.
hard workers. And it's really hard to set boundaries, I think, as a business owner. I think
Mm-hmm.
your business is what you make it. Like I have lots of friends who run amazing businesses and don't work, nearly as close to what I work. But I think that's just my personality. I've just
Mm-hmm.
accepted
Yeah.
that that's the way it is. So while I do have control of my schedule now that I am, and I'm here a lot, I'm not flying all over the world. I still work a lot,
Mm-hmm.
in my business. So, but I
Yeah.
do enjoy the work. It was very challenging, that's for sure.
Entrepreneurship is really interesting because people think that doing something for their own, like starting their own business, etc., they would get more time, they would be more free. but it's nonstop. Like you sleep and you're thinking about it. You wake up and you're thinking about it. It's Sunday, you're thinking about it. It just doesn't stop. While if you're an employee somewhere, you can just shut your laptop and decide not to think about it and it would be okay. So it's really this interesting thing that happens when you start to do something for yourself, and it's not as easy or as glamorous as it is portrayed everywhere else on social media, especially.
True.
um yeah. Kristi, let's talk about what's happening today with not only your brand, but I mean, we're going to talk about your brand as an example, but in general with Canadian businesses, specifically Canadian businesses who have a large market in the United States. Today, just to put the listeners into like what's going on, there was a rule or a law that said if you buy something from Canada or from the like vice versa, there is a limit of $800. And if you buy something less than $800, you don't pay tariffs basically. And that was eliminated a couple of weeks ago. So tell me about what happened and how is it affecting your business specifically?
Yeah. So the rule you're talking about is called, I guess it's a policy more than anything. It's called the
Hmm.
de minimis.
Yeah.
So it was anything under $800 US shipping, not just from Canada, but globally,
Yeah.
entering the US was duty and tariff free, which, as an e-commerce brand, not doing wholesale, many of us use that exemption. Like,
Yeah.
people would even have packages that were over that and then end up splitting them to not have to hit tariffs and stuff like that. So it was really I would say advantageous to small businesses
Hmm.
outside of the US, but also inside the US. So like there's many businesses inside the US that would import using that as well. So I think it's one of those policies where they took it away, and it is harmful, I think, to everybody involved that was utilizing it on a daily basis. So when that went away, which was, I believe, August 29th, so
Hmm.
about the time of recording, almost a month ago,
Yeah.
that means that, packages can no longer just go to the US without duties and tariffs. Specifically for Canada, that brings into question the CUSMA Act, the Canada, US, Mexico Act, which is the trade agreement between
Hmm.
all three countries. And, depending on what you sell and where it's made, you may or may not be compliant. And if you are compliant, that's actually a really good thing, because then you don't have to pay tariffs or duties, but you may have to pay like processing fees and stuff like that at the border, which are pretty minor.
Hmm.
If you're not compliant, which is where my brand falls into, then you're having to pay, a base duty tariff plus the additional emergency
Yeah.
tariff that was put on to Canada, which stacks. So for us, in our case, we went from paying 0% to paying somewhere between 55 to 63% of our package value in tariffs.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, as an ethical brand producing in Canada, we don't have margins to absorb that, nor will
Yeah.
the customer pay it either, which
Yeah.
totally makes sense. So basically, we shut off our shipping August 25th, as
Hmm.
did many small brands. A lot of brands, even if they were compliant, they shut it off anyways because they weren't really sure how to
Yeah.
manage that process either.
Hmm. So, what are the terms for compliance?
Yeah, so they vary by product. So
Okay.
I would say so when you're shipping to the US, there's something called HTS codes. It's basically, I actually don't even know, harmonized tariff schedule codes, I think is
Yeah.
what it stands for.
Yeah.
And basically they categorize what you're selling. So like this shirt would have like a certain number. So then you kind of have to go through the CUSMA Act and read like what
Okay.
is, applicable. So for
Hmm.
certain products, like if there's enough transformation that happens in Canada, they're considered compliant. The thing is with apparel, which is what I sell, it actually has very specific regulations, and it's
Hmm.
excluded from most of the transformation rules, which means that in order to qualify, we need to be knitting, dyeing our fabric in Canada using CUSMA yarns, using yarns that are spun in Canada, North or
Okay.
Mexico or US, and then making it in Canada. And we actually do knit about 60% of our fabric in Canada, which is very unusual. but we use imported yarns because there's
Yeah.
not a lot of yarn spinning that happens in these 3 countries. There's actually none that I
True.
know of in Canada.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about yarn, not like yarn you knit with, but like
Mm-hmm.
industrial yarns. So it's very hard to apply. And it's honestly something we've never even thought about because we've never had to. So the de minimis announcement happened like, I think 30 days before it went into effect. So that's not a lot of time if you're making a product. You know,
Yeah.
we're knitting fabric out to like January right now. Like we can't change
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah.
so that's the rule that we fall into, is that we don't qualify, which is very unfortunate given that we are a Canadian brand and we are manufacturing here, but apparel just seems
Yes.
to have its own set of rules.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Also, in the fashion world, you always start creating way in advance. Like you said, you're doing things for the next season and the season after that. So you can't just immediately stop what you're doing. Recently, I saw you posted on Threads that you had to pay around 400 US dollars for a client. Tell me a little bit more about that story and what happened there.
Oh gosh, yeah. I was just doing my cash flow forecasting, and so I got to see the actual conversion to US. It was $477 Canadian. So
Okay.
a really good, loyal customer had ordered from us before the de minimis ended, and somehow it got a little bit delayed by UPS, and so it
Okay.
didn't cross the border until after the de minimis. So
Okay.
they assessed it with like full duties and full brokerage fees. So the package, I think, was about 750 US dollars, and the duties were 330 US dollars. So that was like basically half the package value. And
Yeah.
of course, the customer wasn't expecting it, and she's not going to want to pay that. And she's a really loyal customer. So we're like, well, we don't want this package to come back and then have to refund the order.
Yeah.
Like, what a mess. So we paid it, and yeah, there goes all our profit on that order, so it's very upsetting. Thankfully, that I think is the only one that got caught in that transition, but that's the reality if we did start shipping just direct from
Yeah.
Canada and now to the US,
Yeah.
and that's just not sustainable.
Just to clarify for the people who are listening to this and who don't know who pays what, basically, when a product arrives to the US, the person buying that product is technically supposed to pay the tariffs and the duties. And if it's a company, they're importing a lot of stuff. They have like a big container of products. They have to pay everything that comes. It's not Canada that has to pay. It's the people in the US who have to pay. But in your situation, you might say, it's a loyal customer, so it's okay. This time I'm gonna, I'm gonna pay this on their behalf. But technically, they're the ones who are supposed to pay. So because it's gonna cost them a lot of money, they will no longer buy from you because it's gonna cost more than the price of the goods that they're buying technically. So just to clarify things, because people are confused about who pays what. They think that it's the country of origin who has to pay the money and send it to the US or something like that, but it's not. It's the people in the US who are paying for that. So Kristi, tell me, what percentage of your sales, total sales of, during your year, comes from the US?
Yeah, I would say on average it's about 35%, but as the year
Okay.
went on, it actually got closer to 50% in the summer.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big portion of our sales over the summer for sure. One thing I want to clarify about the duties payment is there's two options. So like what the situation I explained with the customer is called DDU. It's like duties delivered unpaid. So then the customer has to do it, and a lot of customers just reject packages and then
Yeah.
you lose the sale. There is something called DDP, duties delivered prepaid, and that's what the US is trying to force us to do, which is they're trying to force us to pay the duties before it crosses the border.
Yeah.
Which the mechanism to do that doesn't really exist for certain types of carriers. So that's where that kind of confusion is coming in. So a lot of brands, if they have like lower duties, what they're doing is they're charging the duties at checkout, and then they are prepaying them before they cross the border. But they're often trying to recoup them in some way because it's just so much money.
Yeah, I can see from my own behavior when I'm shopping. I do buy a lot from abroad because of, the different things that I need. And if it's not like when I go to the checkout page, I see like how much is, how much do I have to pay in duties and stuff. But if I don't know, I would be hesitating to buy. So it's always
Oh, for
nicer
sure.
to have a clear vision of how much it's going to really cost me, as opposed to, I mean, it affects how we decide if we want to buy or not. So it might be also affecting what your customers in the US are thinking about when they want to purchase
Mhm.
from you.
Totally.
Kristi, are you talking to other business owners in Canada who are going through these things, and what what's going on? Just tell me a little bit more, like an insider information kind of thing about what's happening in your world.
hmm Yeah, I have pretty good relationships in the fashion industry
Mm-hmm.
because I've been around for a while. Majority of people I know just stopped shipping to the US and still aren't shipping to the US.
Mm-hmm.
Those brands that have large US presence are definitely motivated, I would say, to figure out a way to do it. So a lot of them are trying to figure out, can they open up US warehousing? Can they do some sort of like batch shipping where they're using a
Yeah.
freight forwarder? Like there's a few options to do. But I think most people I know that have like a lower percentage of US sales just have decided just
Yeah.
not to deal with it
Yeah.
whatsoever. But I would say that most bigger brands, even outside of fashion,
Mm-hmm.
the US is a big market
Yeah.
for them. I know brands that are like 80% US shipping out of Canada.
Yes.
So just imagine how devastating that would be to their business.
Yeah.
So I think people are talking about like strategies, obviously things we can do within Canada to increase our sales and looking at other markets as
Mm-hmm.
well. But those are like longer term
Yeah.
strategies and they do take some time to implement as well.
Mm-hmm. I recently saw something about Lululemon also. Their stock prices dropped a lot. One of the reasons is competition in the athleisure world, but
Mhm.
also the tariffs, because they have a very, very big market in the US. So it's really affecting Lululemon. And I can see some things because I track, what's going on in the market. So I can see some of the things they're doing, but it's really interesting. Lululemon is like a much bigger brand. It's a much bigger company, but for smaller businesses, it might be much more destructive or negative because there's one person who has done this, who has built a business, and they're still trying to grow. And in your situation, for example, you're trying to grow, you got this market in the US, etc., and now like there's a door that shut that was bringing you up to 50% of your sales, and now it's not there anymore. So what are your plans to counter that, or to try to still cater to your people in the US, the people who love you and are loyal to you?
Mhm. Yeah, it's such a tough decision because like a lot of these businesses, myself included, like we're under 10 employees, like we're not large
Mm-hmm.
organizations.
Yeah.
So even I think probably somebody like a Lululemon, I would guess, had a whole team aware of probably this was happening and
Yeah.
really like coming up with mitigation plans. Whereas a lot of us, I think, were caught a little bit off guard. So for us, like I think we have a couple of different strategies. So one thing is that we are focusing on, well, we've redirected all of our ad efforts to Canada right now. We just booked the One of a Kind show, which is in
Mm-hmm.
December. It's like a 11-day kind of pop-up shop market in Toronto featuring
Yeah.
Canadian made brands. And we're going to look for like other kind of in-person opportunities as well. We're also going to be exploring wholesale, which is something I haven't really done with the brand that much in a very long time. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there still in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
For our US customers, we looked at it and we thought about doing this like duties delivered prepaid, but realistically, I don't think anybody would pay that because the
Yeah.
checkout surprise is like almost double,
Yeah.
and conversion rates would just plummet. So, and I put us in a different category of apparel. Like I put us almost
Yeah.
in luxury apparel at that price point. So we're definitely exploring US warehousing in partnership with a Canadian third-party logistics company. So opening up, some warehousing capabilities, sending some of our product down there through something called a tariff preference level quota to see if we can get some duties reduction or remediation from the government. And going through that process, But it won't be easy, I don't think, because we're a small brand, so we can't really afford to have so much inventory in 2 different locations. It's really tricky to figure out what that looks like. But we're gonna give it a go because it's like the most important time in the year for any retail brand, I would say, Q3 and Q4. So if we're missing half our sales, like we are in big trouble. So we have to, and like you said, we forecast 6 months out. So everything's planned and it's in production, it's rolling. These assumptions that we made that are no longer true. So we just have to figure out a way to make it work and get scrappy.
Yeah. You just reminded me that the holiday season is around the corner, and most businesses make like half of their yearly sales during that period of time, especially with fashion brands and anything related to gifting, and all of that. So it's going to be, I hope it's going to get better, and I hope something will change from now until then. What are your hopes and dreams, or let's say aspirations, or like the miracle that you wish that happens from now until, well, before the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just hoping that, once we open up that US warehousing capability, that all of our customers come back and are like just waiting to shop with us would be great, because we're right in the middle of launching like most of our fall stuff right now. So it sucks to not be able to have them be able to buy it too. We see the comments on social media and whatnot. I think my dream solution is that we are able to serve both markets. I think both markets are, important. We love our Canadian customers. We love doing in-person events and stuff like that. So I hope those all go well and our warehouse sets up smoothly. That would be the goal, ideally, because we want to end this year profitably. We were in a really good position up until this. So unfortunately, with everything happening, we've started to lose money on a monthly basis, which is not sustainable for a small business. So we really need to be able to turn that around.
This is not an easy situation, and I understand what it feels like to just build, and then something that's not your fault or not something that you did affected your business. I always wear white t-shirts when I record my podcast episode. So I need to have one of yours too.
Yeah, I should find you one.
We will do that. You also have a promo code for anyone who's listening or watching this episode. Just tell me a little bit more about how much discount they get and what the code is.
So yes, I've set up a promo code for all of your listeners. It's Rectified, and it'll give you 15% off your first order with us until I believe it expires at the end of the year.
Yeah. All right. And where can we find you?
You can find us. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Encircled _ or on Threads. I'm very active on Threads, and that's how we connected.
Exactly.
I'm also at Kristi Soomer on Threads and Instagram, and then you can check out our online store at encircled.ca.
Perfect. So, just to our listeners, I want to give them a message during these times, especially with the holiday season, like that's like tomorrow, basically. Encourage all Canadian businesses. Please buy from Canadian businesses as much as possible for your gifts, the gifts that you're going to give to your families. And let's do this all together. Like, let's try to help each other out, even though the threat is not from inside the country, but it's from somewhere else. Let's just do our best and spread this, help each other out, hold each other hands, and help businesses here also grow and sell more locally. And use the code Rectified for 15% to buy from Encircled. Thank you, Kristi, for sharing what's going on with you today. And I hope next time you're going to come here and you're going to give us better news, and we're going to, talk about more about your products and how you're growing your business and all the good things that are happening with you. We'll be back next week with a new episode.